Today's video is going to be about some Hopi Indian, Hopi Native American, end of the world prophecies. And I'm going to read mostly through this article from 2017 talking about apocalyptic prophecies. In the Hopi teachings, we are told toward the end of the world, Spider-Woman will come back and she will weave her web across the landscape. Everywhere you will see her web. And a lot of people have pointed out that this is likely talking about the chemtrails. I've heard it that the Spider-Woman weaves across the sky is what I've heard before. And so landscape, I haven't really heard that, but that's what it says in this article. I see a lot of strange misinformation and this is something that I notice a lot, where somebody will present a prophecy like this and they'll say, oh, this has been fulfilled, and they just act like they have the right answer, but the answer that they give seems really not good a lot of times, in my opinion. And it's just interesting how you'll see that all the time in articles where they'll bring something up where I think that there's an obvious, in my opinion, this is clearly talking about the chemtrails all across the sky. But then you'll see people talk about, clearly this was fulfilled when electricity was introduced. So you see a lot of that. So then, this is a quote, I think, from somebody. So then they proceeded on their journey, but had not gone far when they stopped. Then the messenger said, watch, and pointed to a certain spot toward the setting sun. So he watched and saw a large object revolving. It was white and moving slowly. Then said the four messengers, what did you see? He answered, I saw a large object revolving. It was white and moving slowly. Then said the messengers, it is true. The thing is that which regulates the air over the earth. Notice over the earth. I think that these native people know the secret. They're very secretive people, and what they tell outsiders is one thing, and what they whisper to one another behind closed doors is, I'm sure, another thing. I think of Nettie No Johnson. There was a transvestigator that was Alaskan native, and she had some interesting insider information, in my opinion. So secrecy is a big part of these people, and they're pagans. I think that they're probably leftover pagan shaman type people from the last reset who just so happened to survive. Anyways, so that's my thought right now about these people, that they're guardians of certain truths, they're gatekeepers, and yeah, so let me keep reading this. Then said the messengers, it is true, the thing is that which regulates the air over the earth. It is that which we call the Odaeo, the veil over all. It is said that it would bring great calamity should it revolve too fast. I think that they're referencing the firmament here, and there's a lot from the native prophecies that are in direct alignment with the Bible. And maybe that's why a lot of native people did convert to Christianity. To go back to Nettie No Johnson, she's Christian. And so a lot of native people did convert to Christianity. I believe maybe because they had these prophecies that were passed down, and they realized, hey, the Bible talks about giant hailstones falling down. The Bible, they have some prophecy about a new heaven crashing down from the heavens. They say it's like a blue light and it crashes down. I mean, the Bible talks about New Jerusalem coming down from heaven. So there's a lot of similarities in the prophecies of the Hopi and other natives and the Bible. So I would imagine a lot of them converted when they saw that. Okay, should it turn faster, it would injure mankind. Now we are the regulators and watchers of the veil over all. So yeah, I think that these people are gatekeepers. I think that a lot of the traditions they follow is because they were told that they must continue these traditions or bad things will happen. And it's actually interesting looking into the beginning history of the native people. They were still doing human sacrifice. And I believe that I would have to go research this, but the people that were doing it said that they were being demanded to do these things. Otherwise, who knows? And so to me, that sounds like demonic influence, like they were being commanded by demons to do these rituals. And possibly they were deceived, but they were clearly pagans. These people are animists at the end of the day. They talk about objects as if they have a spirit. Anything has spirit to an animist, and that's not right. God does not like idolatry or paganism. And anyways, they are gatekeepers. They know so many truths, and I imagine that that's what they tell their people, like, oh, you know our silly little stories about the sun being like a chariot. I'm not saying that this is what they say. And the earth being on a turtle's back. I'm sure they tell the people those stories are actually more real than you would think, and the whole outer space NASA stuff is a bunch of BS. I've had comments before from people. I don't know how truthful this is, but it sounds about right. I've had comments before from people in like Thailand, I think, some sort of Southeast Asian country, and they were like, nobody here actually believes in NASA stuff, and it kind of rang true to me that in places like India, and they don't believe that BS, and they actually believe what they're told are native stories because they're told, hey, these native tales have a lot more truth in them than you might believe, and don't pay attention to the deception out there. Because even just our less cultured, what you might think of a less cultured, any random American person, it's our grandparents that said, hey, everybody on TV is just a liar, and or they would say they're all gay or whatever, the gay mafia. It was always our elders saying those things. So in the same way, I think that in these traditions like India, or interesting that India has, India, and then we call our Native Americans Indians. Has anybody unraveled that whole thing? But I think that they've always been saying, hey, there's a lot more wisdom in our teachings than you might think. Ancient Origins, Hopi Prophecy and the End of the World, Part 1. Oh, maybe it's mostly this article that I'm reading from. But I've already said a lot. I'll just try to skim read through stuff. They gotta talk about my globe. I am almost certain that the tribal leaders out there know that they don't live on a globe. These prophecies began to be made public shortly before the mid-20th century. The Hopi are an aggregation of clans that came together at the center point in northern Arizona during the course of their migrations. Because they are not a monolithic tribe, the sources of their prophecies are fragmentary and multifarious. Part of the lack of narrative clarity also has to do with the secretive nature of the Hopi. And Kivas, they do not wish to share these visions with the outside world. Okay. A lot of their secrecy, I think, is because they know that a lot of their history is phony. I think that they were just leftovers from the last reset, and they were possibly some sort of shaman type people in the last reset. And I don't think that they were, they made really nice blankets and stuff, but then the petroglyphs seem very naive in nature. So like they just happened to survive the last cataclysm, and they're trying to scribble down any relevant information they can, because the petroglyphs are very interesting. I've visited those before, and I think that they're probably scratched on really old stuff that has been around so long that it just looks like rock at this point. Anyways, these 3 global destructions were not the result. So they talk about multiple resets. So I think that's a truth. I think that they have the order a little bit mixed up here. I don't know if they talk about it in this, but in another one they said that it's already been destroyed by fire, I think, and some other thing, and then the flood. But I think that the fire is the very last one. I don't think Earth is going to be cleansed with fire until the very end. It's talked about in Book of Revelation. Anyways, I thought that this was really interesting about comparing the Maya and the Hopi. And then the word master is a buzzword. Jesus told us to call nobody master. So whenever you see the word master, I think it's being used on purpose, and we're not supposed to do that. And they're using that word even though that they know that they're not supposed to use that word. I think most times. Master Mason. I think that Freemasonry, they know enough about the Bible to know that Jesus said call no man master, so we're going to call ourselves Master Masons. I don't think that the people that came up with that are ignorant of what Jesus said. Anyways, this was an interesting thing. It has been said that the Maya were masters of time, whereas the Hopi are masters of space. That was just an interesting comment. The verb tenses here are deliberate, given that the Maya no longer follow the long count calendar, so because they were and then are. The Maya no longer follow the long count calendar of 394 years. How advanced of a people do you need to be where you're building calendars on such a time scale, 394 years? That sounds like the same type of time scales of the people, whoever built these magnificent masonry buildings. They were thinking on that kind of time scale. We're building stuff to last millennia. We're not building a plywood house with drywall. And so that's interesting. And because they sell us the story of them being primitive farming people, but they have a very advanced calendar. That doesn't seem like, a native person. Now they use a Solken calendar of 260 days, an amazingly complex system nonetheless. Are we reaching the end of the fourth world in Hopi prophecy? So this, I kind of referenced this earlier, where it seems like these natives think that they must do their rituals, otherwise something will happen. That's just the sense that I get, that they've been told that they must continue to do these rituals, otherwise, who knows? They think that they're keeping everything in balance. This stuff looks very demonically inspired. The whole Kachinka doll or whatever are strange. It reminds me of jesters and, demonic. Like the weird African dance. They have some weird African dancing where they put this like thing on their head. It's a weird like mask face on their head, and they do these strange dancing. Anyways, it doesn't seem godly to me. It seems very demonic and pagan in nature. Fewer and fewer young Hopis are learning their indigenous language. More youth are leaving to seek employment, and high rates of alcoholism. I don't believe the story that these people were like the best Mother Nature farmer and I don't think they like horses. I don't think native people are good at riding horses. But I mean, I guess that one, did the white people bring over the horses allegedly? So I'll give them a break on that one. But you don't really hear of native people growing these gardens. That's just something that they did because they had to, and I don't think that they even were super prolific gardeners. Didn't they do a lot of hunting? There were bison or buffalo everywhere for them to live the easy life. So I just think the whole story that they sell us about the natives is false, and I think that their people probably didn't used to be like live off the land people. That's just what they were forced into because they happened to survive the most recent cataclysm, and they were just left over on this land here waiting for the white man to come back. Many Hopi spiritual leaders claim that we are living in the final days of the fourth world. Some village leader who died at 112 spoke about this. We have teachings and prophecies. We must be alert for signs and omens which will come about. Blood will flow. Our hair and clothing will be scattered upon the earth. Nature will speak to us with its mighty breath of wind. There will be earthquakes and floods causing great disasters, changes in the seasons and in the weather, disappearance of wildlife, and famine in different forms. All of these are, well, I don't know, disappearance of wildlife. I'm sure there's some Bible verses that kind of mention that, but calamity and diverse earthquake in diverse places, and yeah, these are all talked about in the Bible. There will be gradual corruption and confusion among the leaders and people all over the world, and wars will come about like powerful winds. All of this has been planned from the beginning of creation. This is an interesting petroglyph or I would imagine we can only guess at the meaning of these things, and that these are the scribblings of people who were left in a wasteland following a reset, and that's my guess. The Christian cross is there. Maybe this is evidence for that the second coming of Christ has already happened and that we're in Satan's little season. The fact that you can have something like a Christian cross on a petroglyph in the middle of nowhere in Native American land is very interesting. Maybe the gospel has been spread to the whole world at this point, and we're in Satan's little season. I think it's possible. It's an interesting topic to talk about. Here's what the actual one looks like. I mean, not too different. Not too different. The body on this one. Paisley is 33. Paisley equals 33. And you got the T-Rex arms. Hopi prophecies include the fact people would ride in horseless wagons on black ribbons. They probably knew that all of this had been done before. I think they know about... Obviously, they know about the resets. It's part of their lore, like multiple resets. Aerial vehicles would travel roads in the heaven. The Hopi also stated that one of the final signs is that the people would be living in the sky. Look, this is what I was kind of talking about earlier, how, like, there will be some sort of prophecy, and then they'll pretend that there's, like, consensus that the prophecy has been fulfilled, but then they say a really silly way. Like, the International Space Station is fake. It's underwater. Anybody can go look that the International Space Station is underneath a pool. And so people would be living in the sky, International Space Station. What about, like, high-rises? Do people living in huge high-rises not fulfill that? People living in the sky? I think that probably fulfills it. Better than the International Space Station. This is just something interesting about Hopi that I've talked about in the past before. Very secretive. I think a lot of times their languages are mostly fabricated, that they're not fully fledged languages. They're just certain keywords. And so maybe these people worked in a temple and this was their hidden language that they had, but it wasn't like a day-to-day life language. I think that this is just a truth about most of the natives, the American natives. I think that what they claim their language is more like a small collection of words and not a fully functional language. And interesting, this Hopi language thing is $700 for a used one. I think that's interesting. I don't have that much more to go through. So there's some geographic significance. The sun hits that on a certain way. Almost all the petroglyphs are aligned. At least most of the ones that they point out and there's a sign telling you what it's about, they have some sort of alignment with the solstice, or it usually is the summer solstice that these things align. And for millennia, they will keep coming back in the same exact spot because this is a fixed system. We don't live in chaotic Spaceballs land. That would be impossible. It would be impossible for you to build a structure with like a tiny little pinhole where the sun will always come through. Or you can have a tiny little pinhole where Polaris, the North Star, shines through, and it will never move. It's because we don't live in NASA Spaceball land. Hopi elders foresaw numerous social changes. Would be signaled by women starting to wear men's clothing is the end of the fourth world. Finally, a Hopi friend of mine in his 50s said that his grandfather had predicted in the 1960s what seemed to refer to 9/11. He said that an event would happen when America was sleeping and the country would wake up to a thunderous eruption of war. Hopi cycles of time. Oh, so this is what I was saying earlier, that they have some weird mixed up versions. The Hopi believe that we have suffered 3 previous world cataclysms. The first world by fire, a comet, asteroid strike, or a number of volcanic eruptions. I mean, I do believe that one way they reset this place is by blasting a bunch of ash into the sky. The second world was destroyed by ice, a great ice age. I think that doing that, spraying a bunch of ash into the sky, causes an ice age to happen. That's why they look so cold in the first photographs that we have. I think that they were still coming out of the... And they tell us, like, nuclear winter, that they can cause that. I don't think that nukes are real, but I think that they can just blast a bunch of particulate matter into the sky. I mean, here in Oregon, we had crazy wildfires, which they probably weren't wild, but who knows. And it looked like Mars outside. Not that I believe that Mars is like a planet that you can go to, but you get the idea. The sky was orange, and it was weird for a long time. And if that happened for a year, that would be it would certainly be a cataclysm if the sky was blocked out like that for a whole year. Great Ice Age. And as recorded by many cultures, a tremendous deluge destroyed the third world, a flood. So I think that they have their things flipped here. That's what I was mentioning earlier. I think that the first time that the world was destroyed was the Great Flood. And then I think that fire is the very last one. But it's possible, I'm just throwing it out there, it's possible that we're in Satan's little season. And so I would have to go look it up. When does the world get cleansed with fire? After Satan's little season or before Satan's little season? Because that is actually something worth researching, because a lot of people say, like, oh, all the melted buildings are proof that we're in Satan's little season, which there could be something to that. I don't know. I don't think it makes a difference with how you're saved. There's still only one way to the Father, and that's through Jesus Christ. Whether we're in the little season or not, I think the path to salvation is the same. This was an interesting photo. The people clearly look like thugs. The very first photos that we have, they look like gangsters and thugs, and they were. They were reclaiming this earth for the beginning of the next reset. They've always had control over this place, and I mean, they're pretty soft these days, but you can tell that they used to be much more thug, gangster-like. There's a reason New York City was like run by gangsters for a long time, because that's just kind of always how it's been. After the very first reset, whoever grabs a gun and is the most gangster is going to be the one taking over the most stuff. And yeah, I think that's why a lot of times they look like slimy individuals. And I do believe that they were persecuted heavily, whoever was left over on this land, because they're like, they want to own the world, and they do. That NWO is already here, New World Order, and I think that they begin right on the new reset. They don't waste any time. They look cold. It looks very cold. We got the whitewashed background. And I was going to go into, maybe this will just be another video. I'll talk about there are tales of great plagues that were in the Americas. And I think that they tried to wipe out the natives as best they could with plague before they decided to come reclaim all this stuff. And I need to go find it, so I guess this is a good reason to do another video. I remember reading some native tales of people were hiding in the rocks, and if they would, I mean, that is one that they talk about, that stuff is going to fall from the sky and people are going to hide in the rocks. And that's directly referenced in the Bible, that people are going to hide in the rocks because all the cataclysms that are coming down. And it does mention giant hailstones, which natives mention. But another one with the hiding in the rocks and becoming cavemen, basically, was because there were plagues going around and people were dying, and anybody that would go down and drink out of the river would get sick. And I mean, that's kind of interesting, because in Book of Revelation it talks about wormwood falling and poisoning the waters and all sorts of people dying. So big topic. But I think that the natives certainly know a lot more than they let off, and I think that they and many other cultures, they do this thing of, they tell a tale and then they secretly tell their members, hey, you know the thing about the turtle's back isn't that stupid, actually, and everything on the TV is fake and NASA's just CGI. Well, hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know if you're interested in a video on disease in the Americas, and I'll do one on that. It's pretty relevant for today, actually. God bless everyone.